Hello and welcome to Madison Central School's Living Environment Science channel. This is Mr. Hunter. Tonight I'll be presenting to you the circulatory system. The major functions of this system are fairly simple. It is transport oxygen, nutrients to the cells, waste products such as urea and carbon dioxide away from the cells. This system works very tightly with several other systems in the body: the respiratory system, the excretory system, the endocrine system, and the immune system, to help maintain homeostasis throughout the body by doing things like delivering nutrients to the cells when they need them and removing waste products from the cells to be excreted, but also delivering hormones to help regulate systems and helping to protect the body against infections by pathogens that are delivered in the circulatory system to the place of infection. There's a couple of terms that you need to be aware of. The term pulmonary, pulmos being related to the lungs and air. The pulmonary aspects of the circulatory system are related to the lungs. And then you have also cardiac, which is related to the heart itself. Another piece of this that you'll see is later on erythros, which is dealing with the blood itself. So the major organs of this system are the heart. The heart itself is responsible for the pumping action. It pressurizes the system and delivers the blood to the different parts of the body where it can be used to do the transport that it needs to do. The arteries take blood away from the heart. The veins return blood to the heart. The capillaries are very small blood vessels that are throughout the body that um, provide lots of blood flow to the tissues to allow exchange of nutrients and gases to and from those tissues. The heart itself has four chambers. There is a right atrium, there's a right ventricle, there's a left atrium, a left ventricle. There are several valves in the heart that prevent backflow between the different pieces of the heart itself. Between the right atrium and the right ventricle, you've got a tricuspid valve. That valve is right here. If you look at the image, that valve prevents backflow of blood from the right ventricle back into the right atrium, which can cause all sorts of problems if the blood is backflowing into the vena cava, which is delivering the blood back into the heart. From the right ventricle, there is a pulmonic valve, which is here. The pulmonic valve prevents backflow of blood, again, from the lungs back into the heart. The pulmonary arteries take that blood out of the heart and into the lungs, where it picks up its oxygen, and then it comes back through the pulmonary veins. Pulmonary veins, as a side note, are the only place in the body that veins are carrying blood rich in oxygen. That blood flows into the left atrium and then is squeezed from the left atrium through the mitral valve, which is here, down into the left ventricle. The left ventricle being the largest and most muscular chamber of the heart, then squeezes that blood out through the aortic valve, where it enters the aorta and is dispersed to the rest of the body. Again, I've already said this. The blood that comes in through the vena cava is deoxygenated. There isn't much. I can't say any. There isn't much oxygen left in it. It's been used by the cells of the body. The tissues have used it up. That blood flows through the right side of the heart, gets pumped back out to the lungs, where gas exchange happens. Once that gas exchange happens, it enters into the pulmonary veins, which are going to return the blood back into the heart on the left side. And on the left side, goes through again the atria into the ventricle, gets squeezed out of there into the aorta, and dispersed out through the aorta to the rest of the body. This is high pressure blood moving out of the heart. A nick to the aorta is a very bad thing, because the pressure of that blood is super high, and it wouldn't take very long to do a lot of damage. If you were to have a harmed aorta, it can cause seriously life-threatening issues in a very short period of time because of the amount of pressure on that blood. Uh, the blood flows out through the different arteries to the different parts of the body, and the organs will take in the um, oxygen that's in the blood. Blood will also flow around the intestines to the villi, which are small infoldings, which we'll get to when we talk about the digestive system. There are infoldings in the intestines themselves that allow maximize surface area to allow nutrients to get into the blood so that they can get to where it needs to go. The tissues take in what they need through diffusion. The deoxygenated and nutrient low blood then goes back to the heart through the vena cava, and everything starts over again. And if you do the math, if your heart beats 72 times a minute times 24 hours a day times 60 minutes, that's a lot of heartbeats a day. So your heart muscle is working constantly, is working consistently, and it's keeping you alive. And it's moving an awful lot of fluid every single day. Blood itself is not just red blood cells. We're talking about a mix of things. It's very much a mixture of different types of blood cells that all have a slightly different role. The red blood cells, which are called erythrocytes, are what's responsible for the color of our blood. They have hemoglobin in them, which allows them to bind oxygen, to carry the oxygen and the carbon dioxide to and from the cells. There's white blood cells in there, leukocytes, which fight infection. The blood will carry them quickly to sites of infection. Leukocytes have a lot of interesting features about them, which we'll talk about when we get into the immune system aspects of the human body systems. But understand that they are flowing with the blood. Platelets, they help to clot the blood along with other things called fibrinogen. If you get a cut, they will link together and cause a scab to form. And then you also have plasma, which is mostly water, but also contains an awful lot of other things like salts and minerals that help our bodies to function. We talked earlier in the year about blood types. There are 4 blood types. There's type A, type B, type AB, and type O. Those are the major blood types in humans. People with type A blood have on the surface of their cells, they have type A antigens. In their blood, they also have anti B antibodies, which will bind to type B blood and link the blood cells together so they clot up. So, this is why you have to be careful when you're giving someone a blood transfusion that you don't mix type A blood with type B blood so that people can take the transfusion without any side effects. People with type B blood have type B antigens. And again, uh, recall back, antigens are proteins on the surface of the cell that identify the cell as the type. Type B antigens are only found in people with type B blood. They also have type anti A antibodies. So, again, if you give a person with type B blood, type A transfusion, they're going to have a clotting reaction, and it can be life threatening, causing strokes, among other things. People with type AB blood have both A and B antigens, but they have no antibodies to anything, which means they can take any kind of blood type. People with type O blood, on the other side of that, have no antigens, but they have both A and B antibodies, so they can only receive O blood, but they can give their blood to anyone. So this is a feature of our genetics unit we talked about earlier in the year. We're kind of spiraling back a little bit with this, but understand that this is all determined genetically, and it's very much a codominant situation where you can have either just type A genes, you can have just type B genes, you can have A and B type genes, you can have A and O type genes, you can have B and O type genes, or you can have just O. So there are a bunch of different ways blood types are determined, but it's a system that we as humans have finally figured out, and it's saving lives because before we knew this, people would get a blood transfusion on a surgery table. It'd be the wrong blood type, and they would just die on the table because the doctors had no idea what was actually happening. Um, there's also an RH factor. The RH factor is determining whether or not the blood type is positive or negative. It's another type of antigen that can appear on the exterior surface of the blood cell. The RH positive people have these D antigens. RH negative people do not have them. This is the cause of some of the um, rejection issues that happen between mothers and their babies during childbirth. And so it's important for doctors to have done blood typing of both the father and the mother before the birth happens so they know whether or not there's a risk that there could be an RH rejection of the baby as it's being born. Because if they don't do that, then the mother's immune system during the childbirth can actually start to attack the baby. The other thing is we need to be aware that when we're doing blood transfusions, we have to match the ABO blood types, also the RH blood types, or we could have a lot of issues blood clotting wise. Another interesting feature of our circulatory system is the idea that we have on our heart a pacemaker that actually can control the heartbeat basically on its own. It is called the sinoatrial node, and it creates small electrical charges that will allow our heart to beat in a regular fashion. Um, it can happen independent of our brain, and that's handy for us if we happen to have suffered something like a traumatic brain injury, which could cause a heart stoppage. The sinoatrial node will continue that heart rhythm. It is also, however, possible to interrupt that so that it can cause problems, and this is why we have things like defibrillators in schools that can be put on a person's chest that can reset that rhythm and get their heart back to a normal beat. With that being said, this is the end of the circulatory system note.